Okay, everyone, welcome, HOPAC community. Welcome to our Tuesday, March 29th, 2022 public forum for our 2022-2023 budget. I'd like to right now entertain a motion to open the meeting, please. Vice President Savino, second, please. Second. Trustee Martin, all in favor? Aye. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. See you. Okay, as promised, another exciting installment of our school budget moving forward. I'm sure you'll have a lot of some nice information here this evening. Can't wait for us to share it with you. So what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to turn it over to our illustrious superintendent of schools, Mr. Anthony DiCarlo. He'll take us through what's your way.
Thank you very much, President Long, and good evening all. Believe it or not, this is my fifth budget. It just seems like yesterday that we were talking about the first one. So as we started 5 years ago, our budget mission has been to consistently, over the past 5 years, create a budget that will allow students to receive a world-class education while maintaining current programs and proactively planning for our future. Our focus is to stay under the tax cap allowable by law, aligned with our strategic plan in order to preserve a cost-saving and efficient process while preserving a high-quality education program that we've come to expect here at the Land-Pack Central School District. It is our responsibility to prepare our students for the 21st century, and we can only do that by working together to find creative ways to provide our children with the best and most innovative education possible. So tonight, we're going to see a presentation from our assistant superintendent, Mrs. Sandra Clohesi. As we go through the presentation, at the end there'll be question and answer period. If for some reason a question comes up that needs to be further looked at or digged into, what will happen is Sandra will put on our budget website the question, and then we can respond so we can keep a constant kind of running questions and answers as we go through the next couple of weeks until we finally get to the actual budget adoption. So without further ado, I turn it over to our assistant superintendent, Ms. Sandra Clohesi. Sandra, thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Fowler. Welcome everyone tonight to our budget presentation. This is a presentation of a balanced budget after much work between the board, the administration, and different department chairs, principals, to come up with something to keep our balanced budget, maintain our instructional and extracurricular programs, and support our children and the community. This slide you've seen many times before. It talks about our strategic roadmap and the different things that we try and keep in our budgets. We've always had tax cap compliant budgets. We've passed the capital bond. You see some of that work that has been completed. Identification of efficiencies, and we will talk some more about those tonight. We work on hiring our highly qualified staff. We work on right sizing, so we match up our enrollment with our staff. And we have been able to settle favorable contracts. We've restructured departments. Technology has been at the forefront, and we have been using effective use of that technology. Revamp the hiring process, enhance our mentoring program, and streamline the APPR evaluation process. I am not going to read this next slide, but here are many of the things that we've accomplished over the past few years by instituting efficiencies, right sizing, and being able to repurpose staff to increase the opportunities to the students, restore programs that had not, had been once cut. So there has been a lot done over these past 5 years. I want to talk to you again about fiscal challenges. We're still waiting on the state aid budget from the legislature is due April 1st. We're hoping that that happens, and we'll be able to implement that into our budget process. We're working with the tax cap formula. And remember that CPI, the limit, doesn't reflect our economic reality. CPI this year was 4.7%. We were capped at 2%. while our wage growth and things like utility costs have increased closer to CPI. We have change in enrollment and student needs. It depends on the students when they come in, what their needs are, so that changes some of the structure of the staff. And then our contractual obligations such as pension contributions, health insurance costs, BOCES fees, all of which are given to us, not where we are able to set those rates. And of course, governmental mandates without funding. So here is the budget as we have it today. The tax levy has an increase of 3.35, which is tax compliant. Our estimated other revenues, which include state aid, are increasing 6.98%, and our total budget was increasing 4.42%. Here's a breakdown, again, of state aid. So our state aid is increasing $2,500,000, but that includes a $1.25 million increase in building aid, and that is an estimated aid that is not included in our state aid runs, and we'll talk to that a little bit later and how that fits into our calculations. Our investment in other initially was decreasing, but due to the middle school academy becoming a fully district-funded program as opposed to a BOCES program, we have increased the revenue for the middle school students that would come from other districts. So we would get that revenue as opposed to BOCES getting that revenue. And there's a net piece there because we also used to have rental revenue from BOCES. We won't have that anymore. Then our assigned fund balance is exactly the same as it was last year. We didn't change that. The goal is to decrease the amount we're using as assigned fund balance and reserves, but this year, with the tax cap where it is and the needs of the district, we have kept that the same. And then our tax levy is at 3.35. Let's talk a little bit about the tax cap and the building aid. So when I originally did the tax cap calculation, the calculation came out to be 4.665%. That was based on the state aid that we know is due to us and we will receive in the current coming year. What we did is a tentative calculation on phase 1. Now, why I say tentative on phase 1 and then also the energy performance contract is because those are not completed yet. When they are not completed, we do not draw aid. In fact, it's 18 months from commissioner's approval and the final cost reports have to be submitted. So it's dependent upon the final cost report. If that final cost report is delayed, the district will ask for an early aid start, but an early aid start is not guaranteed. I will do my best to get that finalized, but remember our phase 1 of this project was divided into 2 summers. We still have some work going on this summer for phase 1, so that final cost report, by trying to get that in by December, will be a tight timing. We will do our best, and if not, we'll ask for that early aid start. Here's the calculation. So just so you can see, our prior year level levy, the tax-based growth factor, that is given to us by the state. Pilots, the district does not have any. Prior year exemptions was our capital exemption, so that was based on our capital expenses, net of aid for last year. We then have an adjusted prior levy that is able to be increased by the tax levy growth factor. This year is the 2%. And then the exemptions for the current year are the capital levy. Again, that's a net expense that right now has in that calculation that additional $1.25 million. So that number is lower than the initial calculation, which was able to bring us from the 4.66% to the 3.35%. So here I just want to show you, this is calculated based on last year's assessments. We do not have any updated assessments at this time. What the difference in the tax rate and the average increase per month would be about $25 for a $400,000 assessed house. Again, those 2 factors are part of that, which is the tax-based growth factor and the tax levy growth factor, which are given to us from the state controller. So, tax cap in general, we are not planning to exceed the tax levy cap. We have not exceeded the tax levy cap. Budget increases are limited by the state mandated property tax levy cap calculated using the 8-step formula. Our current tax levy is 3.35, reduced from 4.66, and that would require a 50% approval or simple majority. So this chart depicts the past 7 years of tax levy increases, what the average is now over the 7 years, and what the estimated monthly cost of a $400,000 house would be. So 1.42 over 7 years and $25 per month for this year coming. So here are the expenditure budget drivers. These are have been adjusted from when we first presented early on the cost to continue budget, and I will show you some of the differences here. You'll see the total expenditures meet the revenue, which is the $133 million, for a 4.42 budget-to-budget increase. So I want to talk a little bit about those adjustments that we've been making. Our largest adjustments are in what's called attrition and breakage, and these are due to retirement and current enrollment needs. Attrition is when a position is eliminated from the budget. Breakage is the difference between a retiring employee's compensation and a new employee's compensation. This reduction that we have planned still ensures that all current staff can be retained. So there are, in this position, there are positions available to all current staff members. Both these adjustments are due to rates and services. Our largest reduction is the out-of-district tuition, and this was decreased as new information regarding enrollment became available. Our out-of-district tuition, private school placements was also reduced as new enrollment information became available. Instruction expense, other than personnel, so there's no staff or benefits in this number, was reviewed and adjusted with department chairs, principals, and directors to reduce the initial proposed expenditures. Our operations, the same thing. These are not salaries, they're not benefits. We reviewed those and we adjusted from where we were last year till we are this year with the administrators and directors. And then our debt service. Our debt service is per the repayment schedule, and it was increased due to the timing of the work and the receipt. So here's our adjustments. You'll see the first column shows the cost to continue. The cost to continue we proposed was $134,975,000. And through attrition, again, these positions are not being replaced, we were able to reduce $1,449,898. Under breakage for salaries, we were able to reduce salaries and benefits by $412,000. Those positions, though retiring, will be replaced. The salaries will be less than those outgoing employees, and that's where we were able to reduce. You'll see some additions in this column. Initially, the benefits for health insurance was a 6% increase. That increased to 8%. So that was a difference of about $418,000. And then the addition of the middle school program, middle school academy program being brought in-house meant we needed to have additional staff to cover that program. But that would be offset by the tuition that you saw the increase on the other side. BOCES, again, we had a decrease. It was mostly out-of-district tuition. We had some other adjustments due to rates because when we start this process, we're estimating what we think it will cost, and as we get information from BOCES, we have to make those adjustments. Out-of-district tuition, we reduced it by, I believe, one placement, anticipated placement for incoming students, and so we brought that number down also. Again, the instructional, the other than personnel and BOCES, we worked with those department chairs. We were able to decrease by $188,000, and that is in the instructional side of the budget. The The other portion is on the operational side of the budget. We work with those administrators and directors and we're able to increase that by $301,000. Debt service, again, is according to schedule. Nothing that we can do to change that because that is what is already planned and has been borrowed. So we reduced the budget from 134,975 to 133,011 through those adjustments, and we were able to balance the budget to bring it to the tax levy cap of 3.25. Here's just an overview of how the budget summary, right, our $133 million, how it's broken down. So tax levy of $92 million, state aid of $34 million, and then miscellaneous revenue of just under $2 million. So our revenues coming in are $129,593,000. What we then are doing is that's a shortfall from what is needed to continue. So that is that $3,417,000 is use of fund balance and reserves. Again, those numbers are the same as last year. There are some reserves, though, that we are using in this current budget that in the next 2 years will fall off. So we will be looking at that for the future. We had the sale of C-Corp, that we had the tax reduction reserve. It was a 3-year. We are on the 3rd year of that now, so that money will not be available next year. And we are on the 3rd and 4th years on that debt service that we're applying to the budget. So I just want to talk to you a little bit more about fund balance, because fund balance is end of year difference between expenses and revenues. It's transferred to fund balance or reserves where appropriate. The state allows and recommends 4% of budget to be retained by school districts. Just know that Governor Hochul is actually asking to have that increased because the fact that the revenues have not been stable over the years, and we've seen that come back and forth, that reserve, they want to be able to be there so that we can use it if needed, if you find we're in a bad budget year. What is fund balance or reserves really supposed to be for? It's supposed to cover emergency or unbudgeted necessities. Right now, we're budgeting that money to cover continued operations. The reality is that fund balance, it really needs to be there because we don't receive our tax revenue until October. But we're still operating from July to October, so there has to be some money in that undesignated fund balance to make sure that we are able to get through until we receive all of the taxes and we receive our final payment. We just received the information from the county now that we get checked for coming. It prevents us from having to borrow. And if you borrow tax anticipation note, there's interest associated with that, so it's not free. What are the ramifications for using it? It's not a sustainable source to balance budgets. It could lower your bond rating, resulting in higher interest rates for any of your borrowing. And the district could receive a fiscal stress designation from the Office of State Controller. Excuse me. So we've talked before about stimulus funds. And stimulus funds are considered a one-shot revenue. The governor has advised against using them for continuing operations. So our stimulus funds will be applied strategically to ward off the financial cliff. Some have asked, how have we used that money? So our estimated stimulus fund usage for 21-22 may be to bridge the gap between the decrease in transportation aid, because transportation aid is based on actual expenditures. So the expenditures, it's an expense-based aid, were lower in the previous year. And you can't put money aside for future aid. So that money is not there in this year, but we budgeted that money to be part of our revenues. So that $1.2 million decrease, we may need to use some of the CRISA funds to use that to balance the budget and make sure that we have that $3.4 million to put towards next year's budget. But we won't know that until we continue on throughout the year. The other monies that we use is about $1.7 million, and that was for the Summer League program, our COVID Academy, a virtual academy, iTutor, EduSeer, which is credit recovery, and PPE. Now, our original thought was to use CRISA money to create a surplus in which we could have a transfer to capital so that we'd be able to plan a project to increase our HVAC in future years. That is still the goal. Until all of this comes together, I'm not really sure whether we'd be able to use the whole amount of CRISA funds for that. This year, in addition, in this current year, there were additional positions that we added due to new enrollments, new student needs, and those are also at an estimated cost of about, and I have transportation aid, instructional positions, and non-instructional positions for about $1.7 million in total. So we have $1.7 million that we know we spent. We have 1.2 that we don't know if we're going to get. And then we have those additional positions that were put into this year's budget that were not in last year's budget, right? They weren't part of that process. So they were added after the process, but they are in the current, the proposal for 22-23. So sometimes when you ask the question, why salary and benefits, we see that increase. That is a piece of that that will automatically show up before there's any increases in contracts or benefit numbers from budget last year. That's an additional increase. What are our next steps? We're monitoring Albany's progress as they finalize the state budget. It is due by Friday. I really have not had an update. We haven't heard if they're close or not. Usually we hear some buzz, but it's been quiet. And we will continue. If there are adjustments that we can make to contractual items based on revised rates, we will do that. So next week, on April 5th, if we have all of that information, we will be able to present the superintendent's recommended budget, hopefully with those changes in part of that recommendation. And then if not, a final budget will be presented for approval and adoption on April 21st. That is required by law on that date, and then all the information will be sent to the state on the next day, April 22nd. Property tax report part. What most people don't want to see or hear, but it's what happens if we go to a contingency budget. If we go to contingency, if the budget is defeated on May 17th, there are two options. We can hold a second budget vote, or we can immediately adopt a contingency budget. A contingency budget would mean that we need to cut the increase in the tax cap to $3 million from that budget. This level of budget reduction would have a significant negative impact on academics, arts, athletic program, and community use of facilities. Because on that side, the community use of facilities, there are different rules that we need to follow. There's different rates depending on the groups that we must charge for building use under a contingent budget. So that's one way that it affects the community, but the other way would be where it affects the, our programs. $3 million would be a significant cut. Proposition 2 on the ballot, it will be for the school buses. We are planning to replace 6 65-passenger buses. These buses will have air conditioning and storage compartments under the bus to help us with our sports runs, in which we would hopefully be able to use one less bus, because right now we have to put the equipment on a bus because it is not safe to put it inside the bus with the students. We are looking for 2 36-passenger school buses. Those are also with air conditioning. Those are to replace 20-passenger vans, because some of our special education vans are at capacity, and having these 36-passenger buses would help us to not have to add additional buses, but be able to transport the students. We're replacing 1 wheelchair bus, and then the balance is for cameras and related equipment. Replacing the fleet and keeping a replacement plan in place is the safest and most efficient, most predictable way to budget. Bus purchases are on a rotational schedule. steady state aid reimbursement streams at 56% of aid ratio. It leads us to predictable equipment costs, reduced parts inventory, reduced repair costs. With that, I will take questions from the board.
Okay, Sandra, thank you very much. We'll go right down the board. For questions for Sandra? Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
I'm good.
Dave, okay, Tanner?
At this time.
Okay, thank you. Ben?
I'm fine, thank you. I have nothing at this time.
Okay. Lucy?
It's okay. Thank you so much, Sandra, for the presentation. I do have a few questions, if you could help clarify. On page 3, where we restructured departments, can we talk a little bit about what is planned for this year, 22-23? Do we know what restructuring should be?
So there are some retirements happening at the middle school, but we will be filling those replacements with internal staff due to enrollment that has decreased at the high school. Right, so we're moving positions into those open slots, this is 7 to 12 positions. We'll have some kindergarten, right, because we see our kindergarten enrollment is, at the moment, low. So we're thinking that we'll have less kindergarten teachers, but we'll be able to repurpose the teachers in the elementary school into other positions and filling some other open positions. So those are, that's about it, right? Yeah.
So Trustee Masafa, I think what's important, and it's a great question, I know it's a question that will come up from the public, and it's something that when I took on the position as superintendent of schools, we talked about 4 years ago as a part of our strategic plan was to right-size the district. And clearly, we've done that. So, and every building has had right-sizing. If you remember when we first got here, it was the elementary schools, we cut a number of positions. 3 years ago, in this very building, we cut a team. And now what's happening is that smaller group is now going up to the high school. We're making adjustments in class sizes to the high school. So it has been something, to your point, that we've been looking at, that we've been restructuring. And I think what's really important to note is over the course of this strategic roadmap, not only have we cut through attrition, but we've really been able to also add program during that time. You know, AKA of the work that's been done by our Superintendent Trombley with finally bringing all our elementary schools together for curriculum with our Readers and Writers Workshop, with our math program, MHS Success, MHS Life, 9-period day in both the middle school and the high school so that there are more opportunities for students to have electives. We have students now here at the middle school that can take band and chorus and other electives. We added a foreign language component, which is now, you could leave Mayapack Middle School with a full credit after 8th grade, which we were one of the only districts left that wasn't doing that for many, many years. So that restructuring has gone on, it will continue to go on because we're always looking at where we can be able to do things. Another issue that I know has come up in my favorite social media, God forbid anybody asks me the question, and this board knows about it. So when I came on this board, we talked about right-sizing, not just the schools, but right-sizing and looking at all departments. And one of the areas that we talked about was our monitors. And we had said, through attrition, as our monitors are retiring and leaving, we're going to look to security. Not that we have issues here all the time, but we want people who are retired law enforcement, for the most part, who work for security firms, being able to walk the perimeter of the building, being able to be inside the building. So nobody's lost their job. We didn't kick anybody out. This has all happened through attrition. So you can see the consistency across, whether it's instructional or non-instructional, in the work we've done to enhance our academic programs, in this case also help out within our schools. So I just wanted to piggyback Trustee Musafra on the question that was asked. So I'm sorry, Sandra, back to you.
I still have a few more questions. If we could go to page 5, where we talk about the out-of-district tuition. Can we talk about how many students are out of district, and since it is a fiscal challenge, I know it's on one of the later pages, like what is that cost, how much of a fiscal challenge, is it more this year than other years? The new enrollment, can we talk a little bit about that, what exactly that is? We talked about least restricted environment. Can we give an example what that means? And then English language learners. Was the program enhanced, or is it the way it is right now? Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Can we take the last part first?
Sure.
Okay.
Please.
With respect to English language learners as a fiscal challenge, it's just a challenge to be aware of that as we have increased enrollment in English language learners, we have to provide services to meet those needs. Quick example, and just a number doesn't always quantify the amount of services we have to provide. The amount of services we have to provide to each learner is dependent upon how they perform on a state assessment for their requiring the English language, and it's monitored throughout the year. Last year, 2020, 2021, we had on Beds Day, the end of the year, I'm sorry, 154 English language learners across a number of languages. This year on Beds Day, we had approximately 173 English language learners in our district. And supporting them requires appropriate amount of staff to meet their proficiency levels.
So will we have a whole rollout program, or is it more of a push-in program?
This is a push-in program. We have our teachers primarily supporting students in the content areas, but then also across other levels such as elementary, they pull out and they work with our ENL teachers as a stand-in.
And then we talked about the least restrictive environment. Like what?
It's generally a special education,
Okay.
so I'll let Dr. Stewart speak.
I think it's important for everyone to understand.
Sure. As I presented on March 8th in the PPS budget, least restrictive environment is trying to educate students with disabilities with typical development peers to the extent appropriate. For some kids, the least restrictive environment is in our school buildings in a general ed class with special education support. For some of our students, it's in a general education building within the district, but in a special class for part or whole time of the day. And for sometimes with kids with low incidence disabilities, it may be in another program outside of the district. I think one of your questions talked a little bit about increasing expenditures, and as I presented to the board in the community on March 8th, we saw 705 students with disabilities last year in our district, and in 1 year it's gone up to 758. Those students coming in, there was a lot of students moving into the district that are new to the district that required moderate to extensive special education services. Some of those services we could provide in-house in a least restrictive environment, either in a special class or in an integrated co-taught setting. But for some of the kids, and as I said, we have about a census of about 4 more students going out of district proposed next year than we've had this year. And as I presented before, we've had a steady decrease in the number of students with disabilities needing an out-of-district placement over the past 4 years because we've developed programs in-house that we could support our students in their home environment, which we thought was important. However, this particular year, we had such an influx of students with such needs that we could not provide their services in the least restrictive environment in our district. So moving forward for next year, we have to provide them services for next year. They're still residents of the district. And I would say the delta of about 4 more students leaving out of district next year is represented in the budget that Sandra presented.
Thank you.
So Trustee Musafra, just to piggyback on what Dr. Stowell said, so a lot of times when we talk about enrollments, and even though enrollment may be flat, as every year you have no idea what's going to happen. And what happens is that when you have quality special education programs, and the community at large, whether it's the Hudson Valley or whether in this case some of it came from New York City as people moved up, they research. They want what's best for their students, and they research quality programs. And I am proud to say that we have one of the higher quality programs in the area. And people want to come in and they want to, they want their kids to be educated in the Mahopac Central School District. So, that fluctuates from year to year, as Dr. Stoller mentioned. and this happened to be that this past school year, that's what happens, but, Dr. Stoll and the team is doing a great job. I want to echo, we had Dr. Rapport Summers was here for a number of years doing some intern work from us. And Carol Rapport Summers was the special ed director at Somers for many, many years, very, very much in high esteem throughout the Hudson Valley. And when she left, we had a conversation, and she said, Anthony, I'm going to tell you something. Your program here and the services that you that you give to the kids is unparalleled. And you see it in our results. You see it at the high school in our graduation results, the amount of our special ed students who graduate on time. I'm proud to say this past school year, we were upwards of almost 97% of our high schoolers graduating. That's phenomenal. That's the highest it's ever been. So all these things kind of come together to develop a comprehensive school district and a comprehensive high school program. And it's a great question. It's important for the public to understand what really goes into all of it. So thank you once again.
Okay, a few more. We could get to page 10. So on page 10, we talk about the annual cost of the taxpayer for $400,000 assessed value. I don't know, I see the $25 per month. I wasn't sure what the annual cost was.
Multiply times 12 is $300.
So you just talk about, okay, so I thought that meant the annual cost of a home for $400,000 total tax. So you just.
Annual
it's a
increase
300.
per month of $25.
Okay. And then I just want to ask one more question, and then Mike, you can take it over. On page 17, where we talked about that positions which were created and not included in the 2021, he says $1.7 million. Can the board, can we get a breakdown of that?
So if we're talking about a total, not just the positions plus the potential for the decrease in aid of $1.7 million. So yes, we can give you a breakout of this.
Okay, because here's the support positions which were
And I
created.
did show that, I think you do have them from finance.
Okay, because that number's a little different.
It's a little higher. Correct.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher, that's why I wasn't sure what was included in this number compared to before.
Correct.
Okay, that's it for me.
Michael Martin? Michael?
No questions, just thanks for your time and your support.
Greg?
Terrific, thank you, Sandra. So April 1st, we'll probably know the last piece of this puzzle.
We hope.
I just want to say, I graduated in 1974. Making that capital project, what you did to the school, is amazing. I don't know if people have got a chance to walk to the school in the last 6-7 months, but from the music to the chemistry labs, it's incredible what they did here. It's just, nothing was changed in 1974 until pretty much last year, and that's incredible.
I have some good news. We finally this week got our approval for phase 2. At the state, everything was kind of backed up in the state, and we were getting to that point of no return, Ray, where we might not have been able to do work this summer, but I'm very happy to tell the public, and I know the board knows that we got approval for phase 2, so now the bids will start going out, and then we'll start working on a plan. The new superintendent will be, of course, actively involved. And by the way, the new superintendent will be appointed on Thursday night in this very room. That new superintendent will be working closely with Sandra and Mike and the building principals in the cabinet as we get ready for what that's going to look like this summer and what that impact will have on some of our buildings, and of course, as we open up for the following school year. So, as you saw, I was kind of leaning down to Trustee McCracken when April 1st was stated. So, I mean, that's your ballyhoo, so if you wouldn't mind, if that's okay, I don't want to put you on the spot.
Not at all, of course I would love to. So, again, mind you, this is one person's opinion. Excuse me, I'll use the other mic.
Oh my gosh.
That microphone, I think, had the fuzzy thing, and that's always a red flag. My apologies. So, one man's opinion, it works in the state government, but from what's been widely reported, it does not look like lawmakers will have a deal by April 1st. So it's probably going to be a late budget. But, Ms. Cohesi, when I looked at your timeline about the April 5th budget, and again, I hope I'm wrong about the first guess, I hope I'm right about this guess, I do believe we'll probably have a passed state budget by April 5th, and that's that superintendent's proposal, but I really don't think on April 1st we're going to be looking at it past New York State budget. And I just got back from Albany just now, and it's been widely reported that that's probably not going to be the case. So
Just so you know, if they do approve it on the 5th, we will not have the runs on that day unless Trustee McCracken has a way of getting it.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think that's also
Sometimes there's,
that's important to state, though, that if it's passed on April 5th, it won't be, you can't propose a superintendent's proposal by April 5th. My guess would be April 3rd. I hope I'm wrong, I hope it passes April 1st, but that's really the reality that I wanted to share with the Mayapack community, because it's the reality up in Albany right now, it really is.
so most likely, if we do not have any numbers, nothing will change between today and next Tuesday. But with any luck, and we tend to get those runs usually within 24 hours. But it would be, it's highly unusual, except for 1 year when I got a picture of a major budget from someone that helped me out to work with a budget. But that's just the reality. If we don't have that number, I won't be able to update it.
I wish I saw the budget too. My boss isn't getting the first dibs either, so. Trustee
So in terms of some of the work we're doing here on the board, we've advocated for the mandates being reduced. We were successful in the fact that the governor made it optional. We have also been advocating for budget items. So on Monday, we actually had a call, myself and President Marmion had a call with a staff member from Kevin Burns' office, our assemblyman, and we were able to present a couple of the items that the committee had presented. So foundation aid, fully funded expense-based aid, so that's the fact that the transportation aid we received was based on a very low 2020 number. So it was reduced, I don't even know if it was $500,000 or $1 million. $1.2 million, okay. So that doesn't make any sense. We also asked about providing free lunches and also providing, this sounds like very obvious, but the fact that the state education department does not have enough personnel to process paperwork, and we're sending bond requests and approvals up to New York, to Albany, and they're not being approved. So we had a very good conversation with the staff member. Right now we're scheduled for Thursday morning to talk to Senator Harkin or one of his staff members. So we'll continue to advocate for our financial needs, which will be a continuing, we're never going to stop advocating for more support, more financial support going forward. I would invite you, as the last slide in the presentation, to actually reach out to the elected officials and use the website. Okay, also, yes, we have an ad hoc advocacy webpage on the district website. It's fairly easy to use. You can go on and use that to direct your correspondence, or if you want to make a phone call or write a letter. And it's been designed to be as user-friendly as possible. So just wanted to plug our advocacy group. I think is that Chris? Yeah, that is Chris. Okay, one of our members is here. So we just want to plug that, and it does make a difference. It does make a difference. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. To get to the website that Trustee DeLulo just mentioned, you go to the Mayapack website, you go to the Board of Education tab, the Board Subcommittees tab, and then you'll see the Ad Hoc Advocacy Committee. You click that, and it's under Budget Advocacy. You'll see letter templates and a phone script with the same contact information listed in the slideshow, and that's the resources you can use to advocate for district priorities in the state budget.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, guys, thank you very much. What I'd like to do right now is, Melody, we have some people that have signed up for speaking this evening. So would you like to call the first person up, please? welcome.
Hi, so thank you for the opportunity to speak today. So had a couple of points about the overall budget. So I think it's important when you ask the voters to make intelligent decisions about the school budget to allow them to make intelligent choices. What happened to me is I was trying to review like historical information in terms of enrollment or staffing, budget information, things like that, and then I really didn't see it on our website, although many other school districts provide this information for the entire community. I was told I needed to file a FOIL request to get this information. I didn't understand why. I did find some 2021 information for a Westchester school district that had a population of 3,590 students. It had a staff population of 377 versus the Mayapack school district, which has for the same year, slightly higher population of 3,875, which has a total of 679 staff. So I was questioning, I didn't understand the logic of that. The next issue is the transportation. It's approximately 5% of our budget. I don't know if anybody has ever done that number that's in there, I don't know if there's benefits or pension included in that, or it's just purely operational costs. In either case, have we ever done a cost comparison of possibly outsourcing our transportation, especially now when we're looking at a $1,160,000 budget proposal, as well as lift replacements and things like that that are in the budget. Also, there is I watched the October 19th presentation from the Board of Ed regarding the BOCES program, and I'm wondering what that cost is over the years, because my reviewing it is basically a CRT program, and I don't understand why we're doing it, because the New York State Education Department stated that we don't need to do diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not mandated and it's not tied to aid. So I'm just questioning why we're doing this and how much it's going to cost the community, and if we have any input as to what's being discussed. And lastly is the survey that was sent out, which I only got a copy because it was given to me from a parent, and I just think that it should have been made more generally available to the rest of the community. And I did fill it out, and I was just sort of appalled when I opened it and said the first question is, what gender do you closely identify with? So I don't know who prepared this questionnaire, and I just don't understand how this was done in this manner with obviously the blessings of the superintendent and the school board. So those are my points. So I don't know if you have answers or what.
The
Yes.
clerk has taken all that down, and we will respond back to you with all that information that you
Okay.
requested, okay?
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marie. Okay. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. Thank you to the community for tuning in. Again, a lot of interesting information. I've said this before. I've said it for 6 years. The numbers don't lie. This is the reality of what we have right now. And I'd like to compliment our superintendent, this board, and those folks right over there for really guiding us through some very difficult times the last couple of years. So with that, we'll look forward to.
Can I ask one question about what the superintendent said about answering the questions? Do you think it's possible for the answers to some of your inquiries to be posted somewhere, or maybe placed
Yeah, I
in the
mentioned
minutes?
you weren't here, so what we're going to
Okay.
do, Tanner, is we're going to create on the budget page all the questions that come in, the questions themselves and the answers. It'll be a running page of when it comes up so people can look.
That's perfect, because, she asked it publicly, and
Yeah.
people were exposed to her questions, they should be exposed to the answers. I love that you're doing that,
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to wish everybody well. Here in the community, a lot of exciting stuff going on here, obviously with the schools, but a lot of challenges as well. And I think we're up for the challenge, and we're looking forward to moving the educational process and the budget process forward. So with that, could I entertain a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Trustee Martin, can I get a second, please?
Second.
Second, trustee DeLullo, all in favor? Thank you very much, everyone. Good night. Be safe.